Good day, everyone, and welcome back to part two of our discussion this morning on teen mental health and the Safety Summit, which will be held at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse Arena October 10. For this segment of the podcast, we have back Dr. Dakota King-White, Professor of Counseling at Cleveland State University. We have Mrs. Marian Armstrong, Counselor at Parma City High School. And a special guest, we have Miss Brooke Fry, a senior and mental health ambassador at Parma City High. So thank you all for joining us for this segment. To begin with, let's talk a little bit more, Marian, about how these partnerships for the Mental Health Summit and all of the events that and cooperation that you have with the Cavaliers, how did you get that started?
Well, it definitely was not all me. It was a team effort. And being a seasoned counselor, I will never use the term old, being a seasoned counselor, I have been fortunate enough to have many partnerships along the way. Cleveland State being one of my favorite partners. I am a student of the Cleveland State counseling program, so I am a big fan. And I'm also a great partner with NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. So when we started the Mental Health Ambassador program, NAMI was right there at the beginning with us. So they would come in and they would work with us and they would present with us when we did with our students, and then it just grew from there. We are very lucky we have Ohio Guidestone as therapists in our building, and Recovery Resources is also a great partner for our after-school programs. So it just grew. And this year we were very lucky to get involved with the Kevin Love Fund. And that turned out to be a great partnership as well. The Kevin Love Fund, they've been doing a research-based curriculum in social emotional learning for over a year. And one of the things that we're going to do at this summit is we're going to roll that out to all of our school districts. So every school district walking away from this summit will have a year-long curriculum in social emotional learning, and it's a place to start. Because sometimes when you're starting a new program, it's hard to decide where to start.
Absolutely.
And so they have a good place.
Okay, so all of these school districts that are participating, and I understand there are quite a few, they will have access to the curriculum that's going to be available. How about for school districts that did not have or did not take the opportunity to participate? At some point, will they have access to it?
That's actually a really good question, and if somebody reaches out to me, I definitely can get them connected with the Kevin Love Fund. The ladies that I've been working with have been generous and kind, and they've been really supportive and been our biggest cheerleaders, actually. The Kevin Love Fund is sending a whole team out from California to actually provide some of the lessons and breakout sessions at the summit, and they're going to be doing a whole training for all of the advisors, so when they walk away, not only will they have this curriculum, but they'll know what to do with it.
Okay. So, Marian, let me stay with you for a couple more minutes. So, although you are at the high school, we're interested in knowing what's being done at the from kindergarten through 12th grade. But if you want to focus on lower and middle schools right now, what's happening to support youth mental health at the elementary and middle grades?
One of the things that I love to see is more school districts are starting to hire elementary school counselors. That is something that our district has not yet done. We're still working with social workers who are doing a wonderful, wonderful job down there. But there's a need for school counselors because there's a specific skill set that we have trained in. And then middle school as well. One of the things that we had talked about next year is perhaps growing this and having a middle school mental health summit along with the high school mental health summit. So there's always stuff going on in my head over there. So K through 12, there is a social emotional learning curriculum in pretty much every single school district. And it really follows that ASCA model that Kathy was talking about in the last session.
Okay. So, Dr. King-White, you have a lot of expertise in this area. You were a former school counselor before you became a professor at Cleveland State. Talk to us about what you have seen in terms of K middle school, K-12 support for mental health.
That's a great question. So at K through 12 schools, I've seen a lot of support The thing that I love about some districts, what they're doing too, is more of a tiered approach to mental health support. So there are some school districts that have school counselors, like Ms. Armstrong was saying, at the elementary level. Then there are some school districts that have school social workers and school counselors. So one thing that I often talk to school districts that have multiple mental health supports, such as those clinical mental health therapists from outside agencies, school counselors, school social workers, I often say we should look at it, that mental health support, from a tiered system of support. So school counselors, we service all students. And then where social workers, they can help families connect to resources, and our clinical mental health agencies, they can actually help support those tier 3 supports when it comes to mental health supports and concerns. So I've seen some school districts take that approach as well. So I think it's important, and we talked about this in the last segment, that it's important to make sure that we're utilizing the community resources. And I know sometimes people can be a little territorial when it comes to mental health services in schools, but there's a need for social workers, counselors, school psychologists, and clinical mental health therapists. So I've seen a lot of school districts utilize those resources as well within the systems.
Okay. Dr. King-White, do you believe that school districts in Northeast Ohio are getting closer to properly staffing and fulfilling the needs of school counselors?
I think some schools, we do it better than others, where, as Ms. Armstrong, as we were talking about that elementary school counseling piece, I believe that we should have elementary, middle school, and high school counselors if that foundation is set at an early age to support social and emotional learning. Then kids will hopefully be better by the time they get to us in middle school and high school. So I think some school districts, they offer elementary and middle school services as far as mental health supports, but other school districts right now, they don't have those resources for various reasons. Sometimes it's funding, and other times it's just access to additional resources that may be available. So
okay, so there's really no way to say which would be more important: elementary counselors, middle school counselors, or high school counselors?
We are all very important.
All important.
All of
Okay, so when we make funding decisions, we just have to just do the best that we can. In as much as perhaps we cannot have counselors at every level, just look at your environment and do the best you can. Is that it?
And at the elementary level, a lot of it is parenting as well, is providing those parent supports and parent trainings, and teaching those parents what agencies are available in the community and the resources that they do have access to.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Armstrong, take a minute and tell us some things that are uniquely Parma City when it comes to school counseling.
Uniquely Parma City. Wow, I might ask Brooke to help me with this. We are very lucky. We do have a lot of services. So we do have home liaisons, which are school social workers in just about every one of our buildings, and they really help us with that attendance and that mental health piece. So we are really focused on that tiered approach that Dr. King-White was talking about. And as school counselors, we are focusing on all of our students, but we are able to do referrals to our community agency partners, whether they be in-house or out in the community. So we are very, very lucky that our district has been very supportive in the SEL realm.
Okay. I'll go back to Dr. King-White. In this area of youth mental health, talk to us a bit about peer support, peer-to-peer support for youth mental health.
So if you all listen to that our first segment about the Teen Mental Health Summit, we talked a lot about the different concerns that youth are having right now, such as those anxiety concerns, depression, ADHD, behavior concerns in some situations as well. So a lot of times our students, when we think about teens, they talk to their peers about these different issues and concerns. So what I love about the peer support is that they can have a great listening ear. And I think we talked about this in the first segment as well, that normalizing. So when peers are talking amongst themselves and they're talking about different things that they're experiencing, it sort of normalizes it for them. So I think when we think about that important peer support, the students, they may be afraid to come in and talk to us when we're a little bit older, right? Wiser. I don't want to say older, but wiser, right? they may be a little intimidated at first, but they may share with Brooke or with their other peers some of the things that they may be noticing. So that peer support is very important when we think about teens and just them relating to their peers.
Okay, and in a few minutes, we're going to bring our special guest into the conversation, Ms. Brooke Fry. But before we do that, so we don't lose focus on this very important event. Excuse me. Marian, give us now, what are you expecting and what are your plans for the Mental Health Summit next Monday?
We are so excited about this summit coming up on Monday. We're going to be at the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. Right now we have over 15 school districts that are going to be participating. We have over 500 students now, but we're still taking registrations. We're hoping up to 1,000. That's our goal, but we'll take, we're excited to have everybody come. And our goal is to really get the message out that it's okay to talk about mental health. And our goal is to get out there that it's okay not to be okay, and how do we bridge that gap between somebody in crisis and the help that they need. So we have just about every mental health agency working on this project with us. This has been a huge endeavor, and we have 40 breakout sessions during the day. And we're going to have a couple of really fun keynote speakers. And then after a really stressful, long day, even though it'll be fun, we're going to relax with a fun preseason Cavs game at the end of the day. So we are going to have some fun as well.
Well, I am planning to be there. Before we move on, can you tell us what some of the specific topics are going to be explored?
We're going to be, one of the big ones that almost every student is going to participate in is suicide awareness. So one of the focuses that we have in our mental health program is really making sure that everybody's okay. And so mental health, suicide awareness is a big one, and Mental Health 101 is another big one. Cleveland Clinic, we have some counseling and their school counseling programs through Cleveland Clinic. They're going to come talk about when is anxiety normal, and when does anxiety, because we all have anxiety and that's a positive thing because it keeps us motivated, but when does that turn into not so good? What is depression? What is bipolar disorder? Because a lot of kids throw these terms around and they don't really understand what they're talking about. One of the fun sessions we're going to have is the Youth Yoga Project is coming to talk about self-care. The kids are going to be doing some yoga. Like I said before, the Kevin Love Fund, they're going to be sending their whole team, and they're going to be doing some self-care, self-exploratory kind of projects. We have 4 lessons in that. And I know the kids are really excited about Riley's Angels are coming, and they're bringing their therapy dogs, and that's going to be a really fun one where we're going to teach the kids about what's a therapy dog and what's a service dog. Who are you allowed to pet? Who do you not touch? And that's very important for kids to understand.
Okay, so you have a full day planned, and all of these sessions are going to be quite exciting. So now we move to our very special guest, Ms. Brooke Fry, senior at Parma City High School, who is also a mental health ambassador. Welcome, Brooke, and talk to us about your role as a mental health ambassador.
I feel like the role as a mental health ambassador is most definitely overlooked, as we're trying to be counselors, which we're not. We have had training throughout our whole program to be able to be these mental health ambassadors. We get training for awareness, to what to look for, but we're kind of that bridge of getting those students the help they need, which is if it's getting to a principal or a counselor or a parent or even higher up help. I know the counselors or the parents don't get to see everything posted on social media or in the halls or in classrooms. So we're kind of like the little spies of the school. We get to go and see, and we hear a lot more than the teachers and counselors, because I feel like when you're walking through the halls, if you see a teacher or you see a counselor, you're going to be quiet about like what's going on. But I feel like students are more welcoming to be open to people their same age or a little bit older or a little bit younger. So we're mainly the bridge of getting these people the help they need.
That's good.
Okay, thank you. Brooke, I have a follow-up question. So even though I just met you this morning and I have no idea about what your career goals are, has being a mental health ambassador had some impact on the direction you would like to go professionally?
It very much has, and Miss Armstrong is so happy about my career goal now. I will say at first I wanted to be a teacher, and that was my main goal, to be a second grade teacher. But now joining the mental health ambassadors and seeing what all we work through and what we do, I do want to go into nursing, psych nursing, to be able to help people that actually need the help that they want. So being a part of this mental health ambassador and this group has made my career goal take a whole 360.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Okay, so we will definitely come back to that. I'd like to switch for a moment to a broader topic, and I'll go to Dr. King-White, and that is specifically, how do you see that the pandemic has impacted youth mental health?
So I'm glad that Ms. Armstrong started this program specifically around teen mental health ambassadors, because we, even before the pandemic, we did see that students were coming to school anxious, some depressed for various reasons. One thing we can say about the pandemic is that it caused a lot of stress on families. So when we think about the pandemic and how it has impacted teens, I think we have to be mindful of the whole family as well. So the stress level, the mental health concerns, anxiety, depression, all of those things, if they were there before, I think when we think about the pandemic, all those things could have even made some of those situations even worse for families and students. So we have to be mindful of those things in school. So the Teen Summit, perfect timing, I believe, for this to be able to be addressed.
Thank you, Dr. King-White. Mrs. Armstrong, the impact of the pandemic on teen mental health.
I think it was easy for kids to turn their camera off during the pandemic and just be invisible. A lot of teachers were very frustrated and stressed themselves that they were teaching to a number of dots in their Google Classroom. And now having to show up every day and having to be on every day is a shift. And it's a 2-year shift, because we were out of school for a good year and 3/4, because even that every other day thing was difficult for students. So it's getting back into the routine, it's getting back into the role, and I think our kids are doing pretty well. But we still have a little ways to go.
Okay, I'd like to hear what Brooke has to say about this.
People with mental health, like, I wouldn't say issues, but like mental health struggles, they tend to shy away. So being during the pandemic, we were locked in our houses, we couldn't go places. So it really gave them that area to shy away and just be by themselves and kind of lock themselves down. So it took a very strong impact, and with being virtual learning, you didn't have to turn your camera on, you didn't have to be involved. It was kind of get on, you sat, you didn't. There was no connection that these people need to do better and get the things and resources they need. There was no emotional, physical, no support at all through these 2 complete years. So it was a big impact for people with mental health.
So although there's still COVID around and people still come down with cases, Brooke, do you believe that you or most of your friends that you see have bounced back, or do we need a lot more time for them to bounce back from the impacts of COVID and mental health?
There's a very big range. I feel like the people that were kind of just shying away, they have bounced back, but the people with the very big mental health issues, they're still not back. That 2 years took a very big toll on them, and you can't just bounce back. There's no way you possibly can. There's the support and the resources you need, and not having those, you're not just going to wake up one day and be like, yeah, I'm perfectly fine. There's a very big range of steps you need to take to better yourself.
Dr. King-White, are we bouncing back?
So I love what Brooke said. she talked about the importance of resources. So I think when we think about the bouncing back and people getting to a place where they can, survive and thrive with mental health concerns, I think we have to seek out those resources and those community resources that are available. So within our K-12 schools, seeking those out. So we encourage families and community members to seek out support from the K-12 schools with the school counselors, but also to seek out those outside agencies that may be able to provide additional clinical mental health support as well. So I think we're trying to make progress, but I definitely think it's a process. It's a journey. So when we think about this, we have to make sure that we're seeking out the supports that we need.
Okay. And Mrs. Armstrong, you are a counselor of a big high school with a lot of students. Are you seeing bounce back from the pandemic and the impact that it's had on mental health issues?
I am. I think I'm seeing kids that are happy to be back at school, happy to be among their peers. We're still struggling with those kids who checked out during the pandemic. They're still checked out. Our attendance is not back to where it used to be. Some of them just don't come back to school. But we're working on it. The nice thing about the pandemic, if there is a nice thing about the pandemic, is that there's a lot of money that was poured into mental health services in schools. So we are able to do the things that we need to do and to hire the people that support our kids.
Absolutely.
So it's a work in progress, like you said, but we're getting there.
Okay, thank you. Now, another question for our special guest, Brooke. Brooke, what recommendations do you have for teens suffering with mental health issues?
Teens suffering with mental health, they need to get resources and the support they need. It will be the biggest challenge to go through this stuff alone. I promise people, your counselors, your peers, anybody, even friends, they will not judge you for the stuff you are going through. I feel like everybody, even adults at this point, are struggling with mental health because it is shied on and not looked upon as a good thing. It hasn't been. So I feel like the support, it will help greatly to overcome this, or even just limit it to a smaller issue. Mental health has taken a toll on so many people, to points where people aren't even getting out of bed or going to work. It's or even school, like Miss Armstrong said, like our attendance is not back to where it is. And it's a very big struggle throughout the whole world of teens in Britain or teens in all over the world. It's not just a United States issue. It's a very big, broad thing that needs to be helped on. So I feel like getting support or being able to talk to someone, even if it's a stuffed animal, just to talk and let your feelings go will help so much more with mental health issues.
Okay, so even though I have no background or experience in counseling, I am thinking of an instance once where I did hear a group of teens talking about mental health and how they said in their families, in their communities, you don't talk about it because it's seen as a weakness. So you toughen up, you pick yourself up, and you move on in life. So had you overheard that conversation, how would you have responded to that group?
Well, there's a lot to be said for resiliency, that pick yourself up by your bootstraps, but it's we're assuming that everybody can do that. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Tyler Perry said, if you don't have boots, how are you going to pick yourself up by your bootstraps? So, and that's why we need to really focus on connecting our families in need with the services that we have offered, because there's a lot out there for them.
Okay, so that's going to do it for our time today. I'd like to thank all of our listeners, but I'd particularly like to thank our guests, Dr. Dakota King-White, Mrs. Marian Armstrong, and our very special guest, Ms. Brooke Fry. Thank you all for coming. We're looking forward to the summit next Monday, October 10, at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. And I think some great things are going to come from that.
Absolutely.
So thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you, Dr. Hampton.